Hello, this is the RPG Crawler, and welcome to another Indie Game Friday, where each week I take a look at a different independent role-playing game. This time I'm taking a look at one that I did a first look at a while back on, Dungeon of Dragon Knight. Developed and published by Hex Game Studio, it had its official release on Steam back on July 10th, 2019. Dungeon of Dragon Knight is a first-person step-based four-person party dungeon crawler / blobber in the vein of Grimrock and earlier titles. It offers a basically interactable environment, enemies, puzzles, and class-based character advancement with different skills to invest in. In terms of plot, characters are an adventuring group in search of some orcs that had attacked their home. Promised a place to rest and recover by a woman in the woods, they enter her house only to find that it leads directly into a cave. The woman, a witch, has basically tricked the party into going into this cave to save the world, leaving them no choice but to proceed down to find the Dragon Knight within and keep him from opening the gates of hell. When you start a new game, you get a few options. You can start with a sample party or create your own characters, decide on whether to play old school or not, which basically determines whether you can access the auto map or not. And finally, you can pick a difficulty, easy, normal, or hard, which determines not only the enemy difficulty, but also whether your characters are susceptible to hunger or not. Character creation lets you create up to 4 characters for your party. Characters have a race, human, elf, dwarf, or dragonborn, a class, cleric, fighter, ranger, warlord, or wizard, and a series of 6 ability scores, strength, dexterity, constitution, intelligence, wisdom, and charisma. And if you're a tabletop RPG player, you're probably finding things quite familiar at this point. I will say that the stat scaling seems to be on par with a certain tabletop role-playing game's 4th edition, and there are a series of defenses for each character as well: AC, Fortitude, Will, and Reflex. Characters get a certain number of points to distribute between their 6 ability scores, which then impacts their defenses. Characters also have hit points and magic points, which govern their health and ability to cast spells respectively. It's at the skill points where things begin to diverge from the tabletop origins. Each character has a certain number of skill points to purchase skills from 6 skills determined by their particular class. Each skill has up to 5 ranks in it. Some skills, such as heavy armor and weapons, simply have a flat bonus for each point given into that skill, while some skills, especially spellcasting skills like light or spirit magic, have spells that are unlocked once you advance certain numbers of skill ranks into them. It should be noted that there are not that many spells, as many spellcasting skills only unlock a couple spells, and simply because you unlock it doesn't mean you actually know how to cast it. It simply means that you can cast it if you know the formula or rune sequence. Characters may also pick a few traits as well. Traits basically give certain bonuses, either to ability scores, secondary stats, or otherwise. Each character may be given a portrait and a name as well, and while you can randomize the names, there just aren't a whole lot of them in the rotation, so you're probably better served thinking of your own. Once in the game, you're presented with a first-person view of the dungeon. On the left, you have 3 basic icons: resting, map, or options. Resting heals the party and passes time swiftly. The map opens up an auto map unless you've disabled it, and options is simply a typical option menu. There's also a party list in the lower right-hand side. The 4 party members are arranged as you might expect in any blobber in 2 rows of 2, with a spellcasting icon for spellcasting characters, an option to attack with whatever is in either hand, and displays for each character's health and mana. Each character also has 2 quiver slots, which are used for arrows, stones, throwing knives, and so on. Clicking on a character's portrait opens up their character sheet. The first page is an inventory showing what the character is currently carrying and what they have equipped, as well as some pertinent stats such as their current hit points, magic points, and AC, accrued experience, how full they are, and how much weight they are carrying. Other tabs include one that shows their current ability scores and secondary scores, and then their skills. When you accrue enough experience for a character to advance a level, you may go into these tabs on the character sheet and assign 1 additional ability score point and 1 skill rank each time you level up. It's a simple enough character advancement procedure, and one that allows for some degree of character customization. Moving around the dungeon is pretty typical for a step-based blobber. The WASD keys allow you to move about and strafe, while the Q and E keys allow for turning in place. You may interact with items in the environment by clicking on them, such as levers or pull chains, or by dragging items onto them from your inventory, such as dragging keys onto locks. If you drag something from your inventory onto the screen and it's nothing that can be interacted with, you may also either set it down or throw it depending on where you drop it on the screen. This can be useful for triggering traps at a distance or throwing items onto distant pressure plates. Clicking on a breakable object will also attack with your character's equipped weapons, allowing you to smash down barriers such as boxes and crates, as well as break through certain weak walls that are clearly set out. The game functions in real time, so when you encounter monsters, you may, as always, either engage them from afar or close in to attack and then move out of their way before getting attacked back, at least if the terrain and maneuvering allows. If you're experienced with this sort of dungeon crawler, then you're likely one to have seen all of this before. I will say that there are some traps that will prevent you from moving, allowing other traps or monsters to get in their hits on you, and some traps that you can dodge simply because they move or fire at particular intervals. Pit traps, notably, can simply kill you outright rather than dropping you to another level. And how levels are handled is a bit interesting in this one. Instead of discrete levels, there are areas which may maintain multiple levels accessible via ladders. It really isn't too much of a departure from earlier games, but it's nice to see a little bit of variation on that end. There are the other usual things to watch. If you've got hunger turned on, you'll need to save up food and ration it out as appropriate. Lighting, either through torches or via the light spell, is always important, while monitoring your magic use is, as well, pretty important to make sure you stay alive. Spellcasting is done via a rune system, each spell of which has a combination of runes to cast it, a nod to earlier games such as Dungeon Master. Unfortunately, the small spell list and the fact that there's only 6 runes, with up to 2 runes in each spell, makes for a rather shallow spell system all in all. Almost not really handling it like this, I gotta be honest. During play, you may also encounter portals to a tavern area. In this tavern area, you can purchase and sell gear, store gear in a storage box, or pay to heal and restore your characters. It's a nice touch, all in all, and one that allows a little bit of flexibility during exploration in a game genre that's very much dominated by the go-it-alone without any outside help sort of thing. Graphically, the game's about on par with other examples of modern blobbers, although I will say that if you expect a huge amount of diversity in the monsters and wall textures in a particular dungeon crawler, this one may disappoint you. The music isn't half bad, and the game's soundtrack is available as a separate purchase. I'm not sure I would purchase it, but it's a nice option to have for those who like it. In terms of gameplay, Dungeon of Dragon Knight is fairly competent. There are a few odd interface choices, but nothing that isn't super easy to get used to. Loot, in terms of what monsters drop, seems to be semi-randomized in some instances. In essence, certain things are guaranteed, but you will also get occasional differences in some basic equipment that gets dropped. It's nothing that'll leave you at the mercy of the RNG, thankfully. About the only complaint I might have is that the gameplay, in terms of puzzle design, level design as a whole, and skill system, all seem to be a little bit on the shallow end. Except that I'm not sure that's strictly a complaint I want to make, because it does make the game pretty easy to pick up, and if you're not a genre aficionado, it may be a bit of a nice entry-level game to get introduced to it. I've also heard some tales of some bugs and such, but I didn't actually encounter any during my time of playing. I should mention that the game also has an included editor, which will allow players to create and share levels through the Steam Workshop. I haven't tried it myself, but it looks like a solid little addition, although one that's pretty expected by now. I did check this game out in one of my first look videos, and since then it seems to have come a long way in a very short amount of time, although I'm not sure it really meets that finished sort of feel. The dev team, which is relatively small, also seems to be very active even at this time of this recording post-release, and there's apparently been some plans for a few post-release additions and fixes to the game, so that's actually pretty nice, and it might actually upgrade people's view of it in the future. All in all, Dungeon of Dragon Knight is a competent old-school dungeon crawler / blobber with a run-of-the-mill mechanics and graphics that could either count against it or position it as a solid little introduction into the genre, depending on your point of view. Of course, genre classics like Grimrock or Eye of the Beholder are still better overall, and I highly recommend those if you're thinking if you have to get one or the other. But if you've already played those and are looking for a few hours more enjoyment, you could be worse served. Likewise, if you're looking to just get into the genre and not get into anything overly complex that's going to take a lot of time. I would recommend trying to catch it on sale sometime, though, if you can. And on that note, I'm going to leave it off at that. As always, I'll put a link to the store page in the description below. This has been the RPG Crawler with my review of Dungeon of Dragon Knight. If you like what you've seen, remember to leave a like, comment if you got any feedback, and subscribe for more RPG content, both tabletop and computer. Until next time, take care and goodbye. And if you're still watching this far, I'd like to take a moment to thank those who have supported this channel via Patreon or direct donations throughout the years, without which this channel could not have lasted as long as it has. For those who are feeling particularly generous, you can still support my work through Patreon and now through Subscribestar as well, through the links in the description below.